Very good afternoon from Cambodia and all of my colleagues, from ASEAN Secretariat. The issue of climate change is among major concern to ASEAN. Southeast Asia is one of the most at-risk regions in the world to the impact of climate change. In response to the impacts of climate change, the ASEAN member states have proactively taken measures to address the issue at national, regional, and global level, as reflected in the AMS National Report, ASEAN Community Vision 2025, and active participation in the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, or UNFCCC, and Paris Agreement. ASEAN commitment to global climate agenda are reflected, among others, through the ASEAN Joint Statement on Climate Change, to the UNFCCC COPs, and also ASEAN Joint Statement on Biological Diversity to CBD COPs, which this year will focus on decarbonizing development, climate resilience, as well as nature-based solution and post-2020 biodiversity framework. With the UNFCCC COP26 and also the CBD COP15 just around the corner this month, it is very timely and meaningful for us to launch the ASEAN State of Climate Change Report and kickstart the development of the 6th ASEAN State of Environment Report in line with the ASEAN Chairmanship 2021 themes: We Care, We Prepare, We Prosper. I'm pleased to see the vision of a regional climate change report coming to fruition. The ASEAN State of Climate Change Report aims to provide an overall outlook on the state of play of climate change in the context of ASEAN region, which could support ASEAN member state and ASEAN policy decision-making processes. The report is expected to support and contribute to the global stock-taking exercise that will take place every 5 years from 2023 onward under the Paris Agreement to assess collective progress toward achieving the purpose of the agreement and its long-term goals. The report is designed to inform and guide the region and ASEAN member states toward ambitious climate change target through a framework for transparency and transformative action to mitigate and adapt to climate change. The report also contributes an important step toward an ASEAN climate action vision, which include priority actions by 2030 and key enabling environment up to 2050. Furthermore, the COVID-19 pandemic struck the global community during the development of this report, so considerations on green and resilient recovery were taken into account when identifying regional priorities in action to complement the ASEAN Comprehensive Recovery Framework as part of the ASEAN post-pandemic responses. In this light, I wish to congratulate the ASEAN member state for the successful publication of the first ever ASEAN State of Climate Change Report. ASEAN member state leadership in providing strategic guidance and technical input to the development of the report is indeed commendable. At the same time, this effort would not be possible without support from the government of Japan and valuable technical contribution and coordination of the Institute for Global Environmental Strategy, or IGES, and the think tanks from each ASEAN member state. The role of national think tanks from each AMS have been fundamental in gathering data and information, as well as developing national level report on the status of climate change in each ASEAN member state, while IGES, as the implementing agency, play a critical role in putting together the report from regional perspective in close consultation and with valuable input from the ASEAN Working Group on Climate Change, relevant ASEAN sectoral bodies, international organizations, and dialogue and development partner. We should take this opportunity to acknowledge the contribution of each of every one of those who have been involved in the development of this report. I hope that the report will serve as a valuable resource for ASEAN member state and ASEAN in formulating and advancing coordinated climate policy, strategies, and action for decarbonizing and greening development and stronger, resilient community. Building on this success, I also firmly believe that national think tanks, resource person of IGES, along with our sectoral bodies and ASEAN partner, will continue to cooperate and collaborate to accelerate further climate action in the region to ensure greater coordination and impacts on the regions and beyond.
Hello everyone, my name is Shoda Yutaka, Vice Minister for Global Environmental Affairs of the Ministry of the Environment, Japan. First of all, I would like to congratulate on launching the ASEAN State of Climate Change Report, and let me say a few words to express our welcome. I would also extend my appreciation to everyone who contributed to launch ASCCR, especially ASEAN member countries, ASEAN Secretariat, and IGES, as implementing agency. Japan has been supporting ASCCR through the Japan ASEAN Integration Fund, which plays an important role in Japan's cooperation for ASEAN community building and its integration efforts. Without doubt, climate change is one of the most crucial areas of cooperation in the ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific. ASCCR provides specific regional perspectives on the challenges of climate change and sets out the activities required over the next decade to achieve the long-term goals and objectives of the Paris Agreement, as well as the relevant activities that should be implemented from 2030 to 2050. The Paris Agreement entered its implementation period in 2020, and other member countries have mentioned the commitment of carbon neutrality. Under these circumstances, I am confident that this report will be a basis of formulation of measures by grasping the climate situation in the ASEAN region. In order to contribute to ASEAN achievement of carbon neutrality as early as possible, Prime Minister Kishida announced the ASEAN-Japan Climate Change Action Agenda 2.0 at the ASEAN-Japan Summit in October 2021. This Action Agenda 2.0 significantly expands cooperation in the fields of climate change, especially for the transition to decarbonization. In the process of upgrading this ASEAN-Japan Climate Change Action Agenda 2.0, we have fully considered the prioritized action from 2030 to 2050 listed in the ASCCR. We are determined to actively contribute to the decarbonization of the ASEAN region through cooperation based on this Action Agenda 2.0. Thank you very much for your attention.
Hello everyone, my name is Yasuo Takahashi, Executive Director of IGES. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the ASEAN Secretariat for taking the initiative to develop the ASCCR. ASCCR is a result of a great deal of hard work by multiple stakeholders. This important report shows where we are and where we are heading in terms of both adaptation and mitigation. It contains a wealth of information about our current status, existing gaps, and future opportunities. These findings are based on the vast experience held by ASEAN member states, as well as scientific knowledge about climate impacts, and greenhouse gas emissions. ASCCR sets out a climate vision for 2050, putting priority on regional actions by 2030 and beyond up to 2050. We were greatly encouraged by the support we received from the Secretary-General of ASEAN. In the foreword of this report, he highlighted that the ASCCR identifies opportunities for regional cooperation and collaboration to support ASEAN's efforts toward achieving the 2050 net zero transition targets. This message will have a significant impact in the global climate policy arena. The report will impact all sectors inside and outside of ASEAN at all levels, from regional to local. We hope that specific actions detailed in ASCCR will be translated into actual national and subnational policies, thereby steadily changing the flows of finance and technological diffusion, reshaping markets in the region, and transforming society in the ASEAN community. Finally, we would like to draw your attention to a policy proposal set out in ASCCR. Facing the dual crisis of climate change and the COVID-19 pandemic, it is critical to develop a long-term master plan that integrates just transition, green and resilient recovery, and climate change interventions. We'd be very happy if ASCCR can show the light of hope to a global community that faces the unprecedented challenge of stabilizing the climate. I would like to conclude by expressing our sincere gratitude to the ASEAN Secretariat, ASEAN member states, partner organizations, the Japanese government, and the JICE management team for their kind support. We look forward to strengthening our contribution to ASEAN efforts to tackling emerging environmental issues and move towards a sustainable future. Thank you for your attention.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching this joint release of the ASEAN State of Climate Change Report, the ASCCR. I would like to briefly explain key messages and contents of the ASCCR. First of all, the ASCCR is the outcome of the co-production and co-creation approach. Many stakeholders were involved in the entire process. The Environmental Division of the ASEAN Secretariat and the ASEAN Working Group on Climate Change initiated and launched this project 2 years ago and commissioned this work to IGES. IGES, as the implementation agency, has been coordinating the entire process. Importantly, this project took a bottom-up approach and distinguished national think tanks of each country developed the national reports first. And then IGES consolidated all the national reports and developed the ASCCR. We had 3 regional consultation meetings and a series of subsidiary meetings with the ASEAN sectoral bodies such as the ASEAN Center for Energy and ASEAN Dialogue and Development partners such as the Energy Transitions Commission in the UK. The ASCCR was launched in an ASEAN official meeting on 7th October and also was reported to the ASEAN Summit on 26th October. Furthermore, the ASCCR will be presented in a side event at COP26. The expected outcomes were threefold. The first was to contribute to regional level actions such as the ASEAN's overall climate vision, ASEAN Working Group on Climate Change action plans. The second objective was to enhance climate mitigation and adaptation targets and their implementation levels, including the long-term strategies and NDC development and update. The third objective was to prepare for the new national reporting requirements under the Enhanced Transparency Framework and to generate implications for the global stocktake in 2023. Here's a summary of the ASCCR. It has 4 points. First, ASCCR provided an overall outlook of the state of play of climate change issues in the ASEAN region. Second, it presented the ASEAN Climate Vision 2050 towards achieving net zero emissions as well as enhanced resilience and adaptive capacity. Third, it showed recommendations on making the transition toward 2030 and on to 2050 for both adaptation and mitigation, considering ASEAN's development context and the long-term goals of the Paris Agreement. Fourth, it underscored the importance of enhancing and reshaping policy frameworks by integrating and promoting just transition, green and resilient recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic, finance, technology, and capacity development to transform future markets, citizens, and the entire ASEAN community. Here's the table of contents. I will not go into detail. From now on, I will explain the essence of Executive Summary, Section 3 and Section 4. Regarding overarching issues, there are 2 points. First, adaptation and mitigation actions should be synergized wherever possible to be more cost-effective as well as to enhance societal well-being. Examples include climate-smart agriculture and nature-based solutions, including ecosystem-based adaptation, such as agroforestry, protecting mangrove forests, strengthening forest management. The national policy needs to place the REDD+ as priority issues. Moreover, it is important to relocate climate-proofed energy infrastructure to less exposed places. Second, in response to the COVID-19 pandemic and climate crisis, a master plan is needed so that financial flows can support a green and resilient recovery, as well as a just transition. Considering high economic growth in the region, fiscal spending leveraging private finance utilization of the regional international funds are essential to underpin the implementation of this kind of regional and national master plan. The ASEAN Comprehensive Recovery Framework, consisting of 5 strategy areas, need to immediately incorporate green recovery perspectives. This includes reskilling of the workforce and assistance in smooth re-employment in industries related to clean energy, climate-smart agriculture, and sustainable forest management. These policy actions will be the key in green and resilient transitions toward the Paris Agreement goals. Regarding adaptation, first, the ASCCR revealed that ASEAN member states are highly vulnerable to climate change impacts, so the region needs to prioritize resiliency as well as adaptation interventions. Second, the region has been making steady progress in several areas relevant to climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction. But developing power to local institutions needs to take place at a rapid pace. Third, some ASEAN member states have made good progress in strengthening climate science in terms of climate change projections, downscaling projections, climate change risk assessments, and vulnerability assessments, particularly in priority sectors such as water resources and agriculture. However, these are yet to be scaled up beyond specific river basins such as the Mekong River Basin and sectors and to the rest of the region. Fourth, with regard to the AFOL and LULUSHIP sector in the region, there are three key issues. First, nature-based solutions. Second, promoting local and indigenous knowledge of climate adaptation across the region. And third, mainstreaming of adaptation in different sectors at various stages, such as during planning, decision-making, and management. Lastly, there is an immense potential for ASEAN regional cooperation in adaptation. This is because of the diversity of advances made in adaptation in the region. Regarding mitigation, first, ASEAN member states have proactively taken measures in the area of GHG inventory, monitoring, reporting, and verification for GHG inventories, and sector policy planning in the course of developing their nationally determined contributions. Our key challenge is how to raise the level of ambition of the NDCs and related long-term national strategies and policies. Modeling capacity development for long-term projections of mitigation measures toward 2050 and beyond is vital. Second, developing a long-term mitigation strategy for ASEAN will be the key. Emerging mechanisms such as effective carbon pricing and early trading via the ASEAN regional power grid, as well as the prioritization of RED+ program in national policy are essential. Third, climate change mitigation through switching to renewable or low-carbon energy produces multiple co-benefits. For example, improving access to electricity, enhancing energy security, providing local green jobs, reducing indoor and outdoor air pollution, and improving development potential. Combating local air pollution can be the driver of enhancing climate actions in the short and long run. Fourth, for the transition to net zero energy and land systems, it is important to distinguish transient technology that will be diminished or ultimately phased out and technologies that will keep playing a central role in achieving net zero emissions, such as renewable energy. This aspect is very important. Ultimately, in the long run, even for hydrogen production and negative emission technologies, such as direct air capture with carbon capture storage, renewable energies will be the basis. Fifth, the ASEAN Plan of Action for Energy Cooperation early target of 23% in total primary energy supply by 2025 is critical for the transition through 2030 and on to 2050. All policy resources should be devoted to achieving this official regional target, which will be the great near-term milestone. Let me move on to Section 3, Current Status and Outlook of the ASEAN region. Here, we focus on the outlook of the region. Firstly, the future impacts of climate change in ASEAN. These are derived by novel climate models in the world based on the database of the Asia-Pacific Climate Change Adaptation Information Platform. It shows increased extreme events, significant impact on crop productivity on maize, soybean, and rice, significant impact due to sea level rise in terms of inundated area, affected population and economic impact, and heat stress impact on mortality. Secondly, we look at GHG emission pathways which were derived from novel integrated assessment models in the world. The global 1.5 degrees Celsius target calls for ASEAN to achieve a net zero CO2 emission in 2050 on average across models, while ASEAN needs to achieve net zero GHG emissions in 2065 on average. It is also shown that even the updated NDC targets are not consistent with the pathways to achieve 1.5 or 2 degree target. In a nutshell, novel scientific knowledge tells how ASEAN will be impacted by climate change and how ASEAN needs to change the course of development path to keep the Paris Agreement goals within reach. Based on the current state and science on future climate, Section 4 presents prioritized actions toward the ASEAN Climate Vision 2050. This graph is a snapshot of the ASEAN Climate Vision 2050, which shows how ASEAN transitions toward the Paris Agreement goals for both adaptation and mitigation. The vertical axis shows transparency and the horizontal axis shows transformation. This tells that given the limited time and limited carbon budget, all member states as well as the ASEAN region need to achieve raising transparency and promoting transformation at the same time. Here are the ASEAN Climate Goals 2050. Adaptation and mitigation goals are underpinned by development goals, and both interventions need to be synergized wherever possible. Mitigation goals have specific timelines, realizing net zero GHG emissions as early as possible in the latter half of the 21st century, and realizing peak GHG emissions as soon as possible after 2030 to ensure the net zero GHG emission goals is met on schedule. Adaptation goal is to ensure adaptation transition synergy with the mitigation transition toward net zero emissions. For commonly impacted sectors, such as sea level rise and heat stress, outcome-based goals will be set in due course. Then, what will be the ASEAN pathway to the Paris Agreement goals like? The ASCCR has classified a diverse set of actions into 4 groups: acquaint, integrate, involve, motivate, and prioritize specific actions for 2030 and on to 2050 for both adaptation and mitigation. We call this ASEAN pathway AIIM, AIM pathway. The acquaint group of actions is related to raising transparency. Importantly, this group of actions is built on scientific capacity and information base. This group of actions will show where ASEAN is and where ASEAN is heading. Scientific understanding will promote the science policy integration. The integrated group of actions integrates different sectors and policy decision making. And the involve is related to multi-stakeholder engagement. Then, the motivate group of actions includes finance, technology, and human capacity development, which is of vital importance to drive self-sustaining ambition loop. Through survey analysis responded to by the national focal points, 29 adaptation actions and 30 mitigation actions were prioritized. Here, we show top 3 actions for adaptation group of actions. The acquaint group of actions includes promoting risk and vulnerability assessment and developing best practices guidelines and roadmap for technology diffusion, and importantly, strengthening the scientific information base. The integrate and involve groups of actions include mainstreaming, promoting mitigation co-benefits, public-private people partnerships, and multi-stakeholder processes. The motivate group of actions is spearheaded by setting adaptation goals, developing climate risk transfer system, and enhancing technology diffusion. Lastly, we show top 3 actions for mitigation. The acquaint group of actions includes strengthening the scientific information base, co-benefits research, and establishing knowledge center hub on MRV. The integrated group of actions include the accelerating regional power interconnectivity to promote RE and green recovery system integration. The involved group of actions include networks of scientists and practitioners, and education and awareness raising for clean technology. Finally, the motivated group of actions includes setting long-term mitigation goals and roadmaps, and sectoral mitigation planning, and access to international mitigation finance. In conclusion, these prioritized actions are expected to be translated into regional and national policy, mobilizing public and private finance, promoting technological development diffusion, reshaping markets, and transforming the entire ASEAN community. Thank you very much for your kind attention.